Her stroke was a little bit unusual in that it came on slowly.
It's so frustrating, really.
I want to take you back to Labor Day weekend of 2010. You're about to meet two people, Debra Meyerson, Steve Zuckerman. And life was flourishing for both of them. Debra, a tenured professor at Stanford University, known for her groundbreaking work on organizational change, gendered identity, and the author of Tempered Radicals. Steve, also firing on all cylinders, successful executive, co-founder of Self-Help Federal Credit Union, and together they were raising three children, Danny, Adam, and Sarah. And they had already chased down some big dreams, including sailing across Europe on their 52-foot boat, Now or Not. But then in a split second, everything changed.
Literally every hour for 12 hours over the middle of the night, they woke Deb up and gave her a neurologic test, and each time she could do less and less and less.
At just 53 years old, Debra suffered a massive stroke. She lost her speech, much of her mobility, and not long after, the academic career she had built her life around.
We never used clinical depression as the description of what happened to Deb, but there was a degree to which her spirits were dashed.
What could have been the end of their story instead became a new beginning.
She turned that into redoubling the effort.
I try again. Success.
Today, Debra and Steve are the co-founders of Stroke Onward, an organization dedicated to helping survivors and their families navigate the emotional journey of recovery. Debra shares her story in Identity Theft, a remarkable book about rediscovering yourself after stroke.
I knew about identity. Who are you now?
And to me, it's an honor to welcome Debra and Steve to Chatter That Matters.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated.
Nice to see both of you.
Really good to be here.
Thank you, Tony.
Steve, you described the first 48 hours as a slow motion fall off of a cliff. Take us back to that moment in Tahoe when Debra's symptoms first appeared. And what did it really feel like to watch that absolute spiral?
Yeah, brings back some pretty bad memories. Her stroke was a little bit unusual in that it came on slowly. A lot of people's strokes just hit in an instant. Deb started having some loss of control of her right leg and some headaches. And there's actually a much longer backstory of some symptoms she had 6 months earlier. But in that moment, it was really on the second day that the symptoms had arrived. She also was having trouble using her right arm. And somewhere I had learned that strokes often affect one side of the body. So with issues in her right leg and her right arm, we got her to the hospital. It was a local hospital at Tahoe in Truckee. Then they ambulanced us to Reno to a tertiary care center. And when they had done 2 or 3 scans, they confirmed that she had in fact had a stroke. And at that point, Deb's speech was slurred, but she was still relatively functional. But the doctors said the damage to the brain had been done, but the symptoms, the ramifications of that damage would show up over the next 12 hours. And literally every hour for 12 hours over the middle of the night, they woke Deb up and gave her a neurologic test. And each time she could do less and less and less. First, the leg was pretty movable, then not so much, then couldn't move it at all. The arm, same thing. Her speech went from a little slurred to not being able to name objects to having no speech at all. And when she woke up at 8 a.m, she was fully paralyzed on the right side and couldn't get any sound out. And, that was the most helpless feeling because we knew there was a problem going on in her brain. They told us there was. We were watching it take this person away from us, and yet there was absolutely nothing we could do.
Debra, I know, take your time with this, but I'm curious, did you see the clock unfolding the way it was, that every time you woke up, there was less and less you could do, or was it just a blur?
Stanford has the organizational, the behavior. I am teaching a class 2 weeks further, and I like to teach the class.
Yeah, I would say for the first, before the slide actually started, Deb was just in denial. She was conscious and she was basically saying, well, this is a pain in the ass, but I'm going to be in class in 3 weeks and life will be normal. Once she went to bed at about 8:00 that night, I think I'm accurately remembering this, Deb, she really wasn't aware of that whole process. Yeah. She was, her brain was kind of shut off and she wasn't really with us then.
Yeah.
Steve, a lot of credit's being given to you in different interviews about your role in ICU in terms of not only advocating on her behalf, but also the importance of keeping the family together and some sense of positivity and possibility. It's hard to talk about yourself, but just how did you keep it together so that the rest of the people around you could be together?
I think I attribute it to luck more than anything else, that my personality is one that just thrives in a crisis and needing to get stuff done. It's just it's not something I willed myself to do. Deb needed help. The system needed to be navigated. And I just kind of went into problem solving mode. My mom used to say that as a kid and young adult, I tended to operate in an emotional scale of 1 to 10, an emotional range from 4.5 to 5.5. So kind of even keeled was my nature. So I think it suited me well for that crisis.
And you're even keeled, and I can appreciate that. But at the same time, you also are an optimist. You're looking beyond the reality and you're thinking this could be a 6-month blip, maybe a year. When did you realize that life would never be the way it was?
3 years after the stroke.
Yeah, I would say it really was. And I think for the first 3 years when Deb was just working her tail off and we both felt like with access to good medical care, which we were fortunate to have, and Deb's work ethic, which is amazing, that eventually we'd get back to life as we knew it. It wasn't until kind of that moment about 3 years after the stroke that I and we both kind of realized this was a life-changing thing.
And Stanford has 3 years of medical leave, and I am hoping to start again.
Yeah. 2 things I want to talk about with respect to the clock. The first is you see hour after hour, she's losing so much of what you said. I mean, the person I knew is leaving me. And then when did you start seeing that maybe there was an opportunity to not only stop the decline, but to start getting improvement?
Deb had some pretty serious medical complications. So for the first 2 or 3 weeks, she wasn't really able to do much therapy. So there wasn't much progress. But once she started doing speech therapy and physical therapy and occupational therapy, you could see that there were signs of improvement, no question. Maybe one of the most, I tear up when I even think about it, but I think there was a moment when we knew the essence of Deb was still in there. And Deb, you were going to tell the story of Adam. This was a really important moment for all of us because even though Deb couldn't make a sound, still, we knew that the person she was still inside.
When I think about it, I was an engaged mom even early in my recovery. Weeks after my stroke, Adam, my middle son, flew home from Boston. He had just started school at Tufts. So the rehab hospital, he told me his first request to leave school is approved. He was coming home for me, and I like to start in January. What is you think? He asked. I was livid. I thought, no way. But I couldn't say the word. I was so upset. The room was silent. Adam, Steve, Danny, and my mom were looking at each other without knowing it. I was parenting even then.
And I think what Deb didn't say in that story, we did crack up. The words I used to say, Deb, I think your face is telling us no effing way. and we laughed, but we also all started crying because we could see Deb in Deb, even though she couldn't say a word. And up till that point, we didn't really know what was happening in her brain and how much of her cognition and personality was or wasn't there. And that was the first moment when we kind of got that incredibly happy sign that despite all the damage, Deb is still Deb.
Debra, how frustrating is it for you that all of these motions are inside, especially someone that's a Stanford professor that's focused on organizational change and all the dynamics of people moving in the room, that you didn't have the same command that you once had?
It's so frustrating, really. I am 15 years out.
I almost imagined, and I've always wondered with people in a coma what they can hear and they just can't say and express, and how that has to be, a Stephen King horror novel, but you're living that all the time because you're with us and people can see you. And at least the emotions on your face certainly led him to realizing there was a lot more going on. It's interesting. You've written that rehabilitation is only half the journey, but it's the emotional recovery. And one of the second big setbacks you had was when that medical period was up, I guess, and you lost your tenured position at Stanford. How does that factor in, Steve? Did you realize that was going to be a setback, that no matter how hard Debra's working, no matter what her work ethic is, there's an emotional card that's being dealt that's pretty hard to play?
When that happened, Deb kind of doubled down, kind of was incredibly focused on therapy, but it also clearly, we never used clinical depression as the description of what happened to Deb, but there was a degree to which her spirits were dashed, but she turned that into redoubling the effort, but she also turned it into the decision to write a book.
Yeah.
And I sometimes say her reason for writing a book may or may not have been good, because part of it was, screw you, academia. If you tell me I can't have a job, I'm going to still show you I'm an academic and I'm going to write a book. Whatever the reason was, that really became the catalytic, that 5-year process of writing the book.
Yeah.
Is what uncovered the importance of identity and the importance of an emotional journey in recovery, and really gave birth to a new direction for Deb's life and ultimately for mine as well.
Yeah.
Debra, I love your quote. Stroke stole my old life, but it didn't steal me.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have that positivity? I mean, that's such an inspirational thing for people, because sometimes people get knocked off a path, which is like a blast of hot air. Everything changed for you, and you still had this sense of, I could do something with my life.
I am frustrated and committed. And I knew about identity. I studied it at school. Who are you now? I am 3 times a day, I am frustrated.
3 times an hour, 3 times a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the things, just for listeners to understand. You asked the question, Tony, about like when it was at the beginning and she really couldn't get anything out, how frustrating would it be to have this stuff going in your mind and not being able to say anything? And that obviously was unbelievably frustrating. I think the reality and what so much of our work is about is that, unlike many critical medical conditions, stroke becomes a chronic condition. Unlike some other chronic conditions like ALS and MS, it doesn't get treated like a chronic condition, but you can hear 15 years after Deb's stroke, even though she hasn't continued to decline medically, that frustration because of a communication disorder that was caused by the stroke is still there. And in some ways, as Deb gets better and wants to do more, we all know that frustration is a gap between our expectations and our reality. And as her expectations go up, even though her reality is going up, her speech is still getting better 15 years later. But her inability to just sit here and have a conversation with you the way she used to tell you what's going on in her head is just...
It's so frustrating and it's so angry.
Do you think much faster than you speak?
Yeah.
I want to get into the family dynamics. First thing, Steve, I really thought it was a one-word change, but it really was a significant word when you decide yourself, instead of a caregiver, a care partner.
I sort of have to do a little full disclosure because I didn't invent the word. It was actually a couple that we interviewed for the book who first used the phrase care partner, and we just thought it was great. But it's important for us on 3 levels. One is within the medical system. If I refer to myself as a caregiver, it exacerbates the tendency of people to talk to me and not to Deb.
Yeah.
And one of the big problems with anybody who's sick or incapacitated and then throw aphasia on top of it is people sort of assume Deb's not there to be part of her own care. But by calling me a care partner, that says she's part of this care package too. The second was really for me. If I thought of this as Deb's problem and I'm her caregiver, that led to a lot more frustration on my part and resentment. Why do I have to do all these things to help Deb? But by, in a sense, putting myself in the story and saying, no, this stroke really happened to us. We're partners in this. Then that just sort of helps me redefine my identity to say, now that's part of who I am, not just something I have to do. And that was helpful. And the third, which is more and more relevant now, it's absolutely true. Deb needs help from me more than I need help from her, but we still want to have a relationship that's a partnership. That word helps reinforce that and helps us do the work we need to do to figure out how do we rebuild a real partnership in a relationship in the face of having sort of differential abilities around some stuff.
Debra, I want to talk to you about your role as the matriarch, the mother in the family, because when this happens, the entire dynamics of the family must change. Your role as a mom, mentor, advisor, everything that a mom does changes. How did you find a way to still hold on to that role, given it would be so much easier for kids to just bypass you and go to Steve?
I am still a mother. In the evening, I am talking to Debbie, the wife of Danny. She tells me about the new idea of the work. I started telling her about the new therapy device that I wanted to use, but I can't get words out. Debbie is so understanding. I cry and try. I give up. It hurts, really hurts. The next morning, I wake up still hurting. I call Steve, frustrating about last night's conversation. I remind me about the really tired the night before that I had flown to California to New York. He is right. My speech is better after I sleep well, after my coffee. So I try again. Success, not like for myself, but really good. Debra even tells me about the injury in her life. We connect a little deeper. I am engaged in her life.
You know, what Deb went on to say when she gave that as part of a talk is that in parenting, like so many other aspects of her life, she can still do what's important. She just has to do it differently. It's going to look different. And that's one of the most powerful lessons we've learned, is the importance of letting go of trying to recreate exactly what life was like before and trying to figure out what was the most important aspects of the life before, and how can you do those things differently in the face of new constraints.
We come back, Debra and Steve talk about their foundation, Stroke Onward, what they're hoping to do in terms of changing how we look at strokes, the emotional recovery that's required, how healthcare has to step on board and be part of it.
Hi, this is Tony Chapman. I want to talk to you about what RBC Wealth Management is doing to support healthy aging. Old age is becoming old news. We're living longer, and planning for our future means we need to integrate health, wellness, and our financial matters. RBC Wealth Management is partnering with leading experts and organizations like the MIT Age Lab, the National Institute on Aging, the Women's Brain Health Initiative, Elder Caring, and the Women's Age Lab. Why? To provide you with comprehensive resources covering every aspect of you aging well. This includes support for your physical and mental health, caregiving, maintaining financial stability, and preparing for later life health issues, ensuring you can age safely and comfortably, and ideally in your own home. With RBC Wealth Management, you create a personalized plan that adapts as your needs change, giving you peace of mind and security. Visit rbcwealthmanagement.com and learn more about healthy aging and start planning for your future. Healthy aging? Well, that matters to you, to me, and to RBC.
My name is Debra Meyerson. Who am I now? I am alive. For this, I'm grateful and lucky. Many things have changed. I live with disabilities. Some things haven't changed. I cherish the same values, love the same family, work with the same determination. My stroke covered so much of me, but to me, I was the same person. So I had to get my capabilities back.
My guests today are Debra Meyerson and Steve Zuckerman. Debra suffered a horrific stroke. It came on over weeks, not moments. Went from having one of the most successful careers, tenured professor at Stanford, to writing a book called Stolen Identity. She talks with purpose, but obviously struggles sometimes to shape her words, but words well worth listening. Debra, congratulations on writing the book, and I hope in its own way, the people at Stanford that took away your tenure read it and realized they also took away a very smart person. I also really enjoyed two things I want to talk about. First, the Stroke Onward. You're learning that you've done as this sort of even keel advocate on one side, care partner. Debra, who's this tenacious woman that's going to do anything she can to get better. And you've combined that to really focus on the emotional side of recovery. So tell me a little bit about Stroke Onward and what you would feel would make it time well spent on your behalf.
We want to create programs and products and services that support stroke survivors and their families. And our two main efforts right now, one is called the Stroke Onward Community Circle, which just launched, that's designed to be a platform where it'll have chat rooms, it'll have curated information, it'll have live events, but that brings together people who are working through or supporting as family or as medical professionals this chronic condition of stroke. People who are still trying to get better, trying to create community, trying to find information around the emotional journey.
Congratulations on your launch.
Thank you. And we'll make sure to get you the link for your show notes.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is something we're calling regional collective impact gatherings. And we sort of have two models of gatherings. One is we call it Stroke Care Onward, to bring medical professionals together with stroke survivors and families to talk about what's not available in the healthcare system to support this chronic journey for stroke survivors. Mm-hmm. And then the other, which may be our most exciting, is something we're calling stroke monologues. And I often say, think TEDx for the emotional journey in stroke recovery. So we just did 2 performances of it in Oakland and Menlo Park, California last week, and 6 survivors or care partners or medical professionals told stories of their emotional journey in recovery. And, we had between the 2 events about 200 people in the audience. And what we hear is that it just brings to life that importance. And we often say we want to redefine recovery. Recovery isn't just rehabilitation. Recovery is giving people the tools to build their best life after stroke, whatever their disabilities are. So, we've had stroke survivors who literally, if you met them on the street, you wouldn't know they had a stroke, but they still have issues they're dealing with, to a woman who has locked-in syndrome and who used eye blinks to write a story that then was played through an AI-generated voice while she sat in her wheelchair on stage.
The stroke monologues.
As part of our most recent stroke monologues. The variability is huge, but what we're trying to get people to see is that this journey through the chronic condition becomes largely an emotional journey, an identity journey. And so at the core, the mission of Stroke Onward is to try to drive some change in the medical system to get that piece of the recovery process better supported. We hope people will get direct benefit along the way. But again, our vision is long after we're pushing up daisies, 40, 50 years from now, anybody who has a stroke enters a medical system that supports that whole journey.
Speaking of journeys, if I have this right, in 2022, 12 years after your stroke, you completed a 4,500-mile stroke across America ride on a tandem bike. I wish people could see your smile.
Yeah.
You would probably never would have thought of doing that if Debra had not had a stroke and you guys were going about your great careers. But that must have been one of the most intimate, special moments of your respective lives.
Before the stroke, I am a single rider. After the stroke, it's really hard. One hand.
Riding cross country had been on my bucket list since my college buddy did it the year after we graduated. So it's not impossible we would have done it on single bikes. I think the thing, and I'm forever grateful to Deb for putting up with it. You might gather Deb's not big on going through life as a passenger.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see that. I'm laughing, thinking, my God, you must be going, what is this idiot doing now on the bike?
At least she is part of the engine, but she can't control the steering and the braking, and didn't love it at the beginning, but I think has come to.
I love it.
She gets to enjoy more podcasts while we're riding because I feel like I got to stay focused on the traffic. But the trip was amazing. I'm not sure I would have used the word intimate to describe it. Part of the problem was we're 2 type A personalities and we were trying to generate publicity.
Yeah.
And we hosted 16 community events going across. So after riding for 8 hours a day, we probably spent 3 to 4 hours every night on the computer. Yeah. And that wasn't intimate.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Debra, you got such a great way with words. And you talk about a loss of language, not a loss of intelligence. Does it drive you crazy when people try to answer your sentences?
Yes, really, the drives me crazy. The Steve wanted to help. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've learned, I jokingly say, how stupid was I that it took me 3 years to learn the 6 magic words, which are, would you like me to help?
Yeah. Yeah.
Debra, sadly, it takes a stroke often for a man to realize that they should be asking that question more often. So
Yeah.
You're such a wonderful story. And I always end with my takeaways because I think I'm only doing justice that I want you to know that I truly listen. But I say the 3 things that I really love is your way with words, things like, stroke stole my old life. It didn't steal me. These metaphors that really remind us. I think the second one was, Steve, you talked about you have to let go of before you can focus on tomorrow. And I think this is a lesson for everyone. We tend to look to our past and we try to hold on to rungs that might not be there anymore. And I think it's really a big part of your message to others is that life changes and you've got to react to it. The third one, though, and I think the most important, is how often we judge people by the way they look, or the way they sound, or the way they act. And we immediately label them as not intellectually worthy. They couldn't possibly have a joke that would entertain me, or how soon can I extract myself from this situation because I'm not comfortable with this speed of exchange. And Debra, you just prove it. I can see your brain firing when you're thinking about what to answer. It's going to sound horrible, but I think I'm more your intellectual match the way you are now compared to where you would be if those words were coming out and what you're thinking. Because I could read it in your book and I could read it in the thoughts you've expressed. You are blessed with this wonderful intelligence and you've turned such negativity and life-changing horrors into something that's going to benefit so many people. And that you've got a care partner in Steve that realizes that he's your Robin to you're the Batman, as opposed to trying to be the superhero taking care of you. And I think there's some such powerful lessons for all of us. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
The documentary.
PBS station out of Syracuse, WCNY, took a lot of the footage that we created from our bike trip and then some additional material and created a 30-minute documentary that's currently available on their website.
I laughed a lot. Thank you.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.